Our FTO program sucks. I need you to find us a new one. I sat in the chair opposite the captain of operations while he complained. We've got officers who don't even know how to fill out a basic crash report without screwing it up. I'm tired of the problems, so we're going to start by overhauling our FTO program. At the time, I was the longest serving FTO on the department. Not because I'd been there forever or anything like that, mostly because I loved teaching, and even though the entire program was a mess, I kept doing it because I personally enjoyed it. I didn't argue with the captain, because he was mostly right. Our program at the time had no real leadership, just 6 or 7 FTOs spread over 2 shifts who all did their own things. A casual observer would think we had 6 or 7 different FTO programs, and to be honest, we did. After a few questions, to make sure I understood what he wanted me to do, I walked out of the office excited that I was going to be able to make some changes to a program that I really loved. I was going to be able to put together a program that would provide quality and consistent training to all of our new officers on the department. Finally, we would have some organization and structure so that we didn't have to reinvent the process with every new hire. I was excited. I didn't understand the real issue for several months. At that point in my career, I had become the old guy on the shift, an informal leader that people listened to, mostly because of my experience. Giving orders and providing leadership to other officers had become easy for me, but this was going to be something very different. I was going to have to start leading people of higher rank, people with actual authority, and people with no reason, desire, or motivation to listen to me. I was going to have to lead up, and that was the real issue. It's time to start telling our own stories. I'm Steve Kellums, and welcome to Blue Canary. Leading up. General William T. Sherman once said, "We have good corporals and good sergeants, and some good lieutenants and captains, and those are far more important than good generals." Sherman recognized the importance of leading up. What is leading up? It's providing leadership in an organization from a position of lower authority. It's understanding the role played by various members of an organization and how to properly and effectively work within that organization. This is more commonly referred to as followership. Followership, at its core, is the individual's willingness to go along with a leader, their willingness to follow. But it's much more than that. We put tremendous emphasis on leadership. Hell, my entire Season 5 is focusing on leadership, but we often forget the importance of the follower. Without followers, there are no leaders. It's said that all leaders are followers, but not all followers are leaders. And that's an interesting thought. The concept behind this is that to be a successful leader, you must know how to follow. Taking that a step further, you must realize that every leader has a boss. For example, in the public safety realm, every sergeant must report to a lieutenant. Every lieutenant reports to a captain. Every chief of police reports to a mayor or city council, and every sheriff reports to the electorate. Everybody has a boss. Being a good follower will provide you with the skills necessary to help you be a good leader. Now, let's look at the second part of that saying. Not all followers are leaders. Another true statement. Some people are simply not cut out for leadership. They're not wired that way. They can be good followers, but refuse to accept some of the basic principles of leadership. Most people don't start out as leaders. They start out as followers. But as they learn to be a good follower, they start learning the skills necessary to be leaders and grow. There are several essential qualities to an exemplary follower. We should always be looking to improve in these areas. Let's take a quick look at those essential qualities. Self-directing. Good followers are capable of working without supervision. They know the job and the mission of the department, and they actively work to make those things happen. There are 2 important elements to self-directing that we need to understand. The first one is participation. The follower should be actively engaged in the department. The image of a person leaning forward in their seat should come to mind. Someone who is working to move the organization forward. The second element is to be a critical thinker. Critical thinking involves going beyond collecting information or observing activities passively. It implies an active mental debate with things or events that we could otherwise process at face value. The active, independent mind confronts the situation and scrutinizes it closely, as if to stand it on its head or on its side. conducting a thorough examination of its far-reaching implications or possibilities. The follower, who is an active participant in the department and understands the department's vision and goals, who is a critical thinker and can make difficult decisions without the necessity of close personal management, is an exemplary follower. Confidence. Good followers are confident in their skills and abilities. They know their job, and they know that they know their job. They buy into and are motivated by excellence. This is an important step to becoming a leader. Confidence is a cornerstone of leadership, and the best way to develop confidence as a leader is to develop confidence as a follower. Knowledgeable. Good followers never stop learning. They don't rely upon the past, but take every opportunity to learn more about their profession and continue to excel. Knowledge is a cornerstone to good leadership, and good followers understand its importance. Courageous. Good followers are not afraid to question their leaders. They're not afraid to ask the difficult questions and to have the moral foundation to deal with the outcomes. They're not yes men, but people who help hold the leader accountable.
The Legal Liability Risk Management Institute is the nation's largest provider of liability and risk management services in the United States. Our goal is to help reduce liability, reduce lawsuits, and enhance officer performance. Regardless of the size of your agency, we have a risk management solution. You may contact us at www.llrmi.com or call 317-386-8325.
U.S. Air Force Colonel Philip Mellinger wrote an article called The 10 Rules of Good Followership. This article provided 10 clear rules to being a good follower. Understanding these rules and living by them will not only improve your ability to follow, but also your ability to lead. Let's break down these 10 rules. Don't blame your boss for an unpopular decision or policy. Your job is to support, not undermine. When I read Colonel Mellinger's article, his very first rule hit me pretty hard. It told me I was in the right place and finding information that was going to make a difference. How many times have you been called into the office by a supervisor and the first words out of their mouth was something like this? You made the lieutenant pretty mad. He's told me to make sure that you understand you can't do that, and he's going to change your beat assignment. If I have heard that once, I've heard it 100 times. Instead of dealing with problems or issues, your immediate supervisor took the coward's way out. They pushed all of the bad things off onto their boss, making sure you know that they didn't want to do it and that it's not up to them. But once you understand good followership, you can immediately see how that sends a terrible message to your subordinates. By pointing fingers and not taking responsibility, you undermine your own leadership and authority, while encouraging the employee to be disgruntled against an individual and not looking at the actions they took. A good follower should never pass the buck. They should be the ones giving the message. As immediate supervisors, they should be leading the conversation. Your actions are unacceptable, and to ensure that you don't do it again, I am changing your beat assignment. When they ask you if this was all the lieutenant's doing, your response should simply be, it's my doing. Fight with your boss if necessary, but do it in private. Avoid embarrassing situations and never reveal to others what was discussed. This is that courage thing we already talked about. As a follower, you must have the courage to call out your supervisors, to question them, and when necessary to hold them accountable. But you must do that in private. Most leaders will listen in private, but only bristle and fight back if the challenge is made in a public space. Arguing with your boss behind closed doors is a key element of followership. Arguing with your boss in front of roll call is insubordination. Another key element of this is to always remember that the private conversation you had with the boss must remain private. Sharing the contents of that conversation with your coworkers will only make it impossible to have the private discussion in the future. Make the decision, then run it past your boss. Use your initiative. This is the part of being self-directing. Good followers will make the decision and then inform their supervisors of the decisions and the outcomes of the decision. This frees the leader up from dealing with the normal functions of the department and lets them focus on their specific responsibilities. When a subordinate would come into my office and tell me they had a problem that needed my attention, it was always problematic. On one hand, I wanted to help them, but on the other hand, I had my own issues that frequently took up all of my time. This would result in one of two responses. I either stopped doing the job I was supposed to be doing to solve someone else's problem, Or I shut down the subordinate and not only didn't solve their problem, but likely made it harder for them to come to me in the future with problems that legitimately needed my attention. When my employees came to me and said they had an issue that they resolved and were just informing me of, it was a breath of fresh air. I appreciated them so much for making those decisions, and even if I didn't agree with the decision, I was far likelier to support them knowing that the employee took the initiative. Accept responsibility whenever it is offered. A good follower and a good leader don't sit around and wait for the stars to align. They don't refuse to act until they've reached that perfect moment when their knowledge, skills, and abilities coincide with the leadership tasks at hand. Mostly because it will never happen. You will never be ready. You will never feel like you have enough experience or skill. You will never feel like you're being paid enough. You will never feel ready. So just do it. Accept responsibility whenever it is offered. If there is a new program that your bosses need someone to spearhead, do it. If the sergeant needs someone to cover the road while they're in an important meeting, volunteer. When all of the other officers are looking for guidance on that confusing scene, step up. That's what makes a good follower, and that's what makes a good leader. Tell the truth and don't quibble. Your boss will be given advice up the chain of command based on what you said. In Antigone, Sophocles wrote, "No one loves the messenger who brings bad news." And this sentiment carries on to this day. The idea that the person who provides the leader with bad news is held accountable for that news. Many people feel that in order to protect themselves, they must shade the information, say it in a way that makes it sound better than it is, provide context so that no one will take offense to the information, and ultimately save themselves from the wrath of the leader. But this couldn't be less helpful. Leaders make decisions based on the information they have at the time the decision is made. If the information is not accurate or made to seem less important, then their decisions will not match the issue and will likely cause more problems in the future. Don't try and spin the information. When you brief your bosses, stick to the facts. Like my good friend Joe Friday used to say, just the facts, ma'am. Do your homework. Give your boss all the information needed to make a decision. Anticipate possible questions. The more you do, the less your boss needs to do. I like to describe this like a dinner plate on Thanksgiving Day. As the administrative captain at my department, my workload was like a dinner plate that had just made a pass at the Thanksgiving Day meal, and there were no seconds allowed. It was overflowing. When an employee would come in with a problem or an idea, all I ever saw was more work, more food to try and pile on my dinner plate. But the plate couldn't hold it. So what do? I say no. If you want to make sure your great idea will die before it gets a chance to do anything, present it to your boss with no supporting information, with nothing done, just a raw idea, and guess what? DOA. But if you come to your boss with an idea that you have fully fleshed out, you have written it out like a general order, you have a presentation ready, you have anticipated the questions and have answers, you will likely see your idea turn into a reality. When making a recommendation, remember who will probably have to implement it. This means you must know your own limitations and weaknesses as well as your strengths. Remember my dinner plate analogy? Well, it applies here as well. You see, my new idea or program is going to need someone to shepherd it and make sure it gets implemented properly. That's work, and work your bosses don't likely have time for. That means that the boss will be looking for someone to implement the idea, and who better than the person who came up with the idea in the first place? Just understand that with your recommendations, you will likely find yourself having to accept the responsibility of the idea. That's a good thing. But to make this work, you must understand your own skills, what you do well, and what things you struggle with. This is why it's important to build teams. Find like-minded individuals that have skills complementary to your own and bring them on board to help. Building teams is not just for the leaders, but for the followers as well. Keep your boss informed of what's going on in the unit. People will be reluctant to tell him or her their problems and successes. You should do it for them and assume someone else will tell the boss about yours. The greatest reward I have ever received was being able to watch my people get their awards. There are many employees out there that only want the bosses to see them. They try and take credit for anything good that happens and love to throw blame at others to protect themselves. These type of followers are toxic and all too common. They're toxic because they start building a culture within the group of self-promotion and deflection. Soon, no one is cooperating and the organization will fail. Another type of follower is the one that refuses to acknowledge any of their good work. Being modest and humble is rarely seen as a character flaw, but in some instances, employees will even stand back and allow others to take the credit for their work. The key to both issues is to provide your boss with the facts, the information about the issues and successes of the unit. This information is not about you, but the organization and the unit. The goal is to make the team function more efficiently and provide the leader with information to make good decisions. Don't worry about yourself. If you model good followership, someone else will be doing the same thing, and they will pass on the information about your performance. If you see a problem, fix it. Don't worry about who will have gotten the blame or who gets the praise. That's not my job. If I've heard that once, I've heard it 1,000 times. That's not my job. People will go out of their way to blame someone else or complain about someone else and refuse to fix the problem, even if that problem has a simple solution. I once received an email from a dispatcher. The dispatcher had taken a picture of the trash can located in the stairwell outside of the central dispatch center. The trash can was overflowing with trash, and several full trash bags were tied up and piled on the floor next to it. The email complained that the trash wasn't being taken out. That's right. The dispatcher had taken the time to photograph the problem, write and send a formal complaint about the problem, instead of just taking out the trash. The amount of time they spent filing the complaint was longer than it would have taken to just take out the trash. When I addressed the complaint with the dispatcher, I advised them that due to budgets, we only had one janitor for 3 buildings, and they were overworked. I went on to explain that we were not getting support to hire more janitorial staff and that the issue was not going to get better unless the dispatchers started to help by taking out their own trash. The response I got? That's not my job. That's not a good follower, and they will never make a good leader. Put in more than an honest day's work, but don't ever forget the needs of your family. If they are unhappy, you will be too, and your job performance will suffer accordingly. This one is self-explanatory. To be a good follower and a good leader, you need to be able to focus on your job when you're at work. If your family is unhappy or if you are unhealthy, you won't be able to do that. Self-care, both mentally and physically, is key to leadership. I remember my wife telling me several times, "You're being a jerk, go work out, you'll feel better." We bring our home life to work, and we bring our work life home. We must find a balance, have hobbies, spend time with your family, take vacations, work out, stay healthy mentally and physically, and your performance will carry over personally and professionally. These 10 rules of followership will help you become a better follower, which in turn will help you become a better leader. They will help you build skills and put you in a position to make changes within your department from a much lower level of authority than you ever imagined. By applying these concepts of followership, you'll be able to lead up. And that's the story we have to tell. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm curious what questions you're getting asked. What isn't the news covering? What story needs to be told? Connect with me at bluecanarypodcast@gmail.com.